A lot of people are not familiar with this guy, but I am. So, Charlie Munger died, I believe, yesterday or the day before yesterday. And he died at 99 years old. 99 years old. Also, who passed away, shout out to Executive Suite Emily. I'm going to read that super chat shortly. Also, who died was Henry Kissinger. Now, a lot of people are not familiar with who Henry Kissinger is. Henry Kissinger is considered by many to be one of the most menacing people and most influential people of what's happening within our culture, society, and government. Let me say that again. Henry Kissinger, and this is his book, and I've told you guys to read this. Maybe some of you shouldn't read it. I actually had a conversation about this book inside of the video that I'm going to drop on the Patreon. It's just a small part of it. And I'm dropping that video tomorrow inside of the Patreon. So link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. But Henry Kissinger, and this book is thick. This book is literally, it was one of the best books that I've ever read in my entire life. About 800 pages. It's called Diplomacy. This is what it looks like. You can go and get it from you don't even have to purchase the book. I purchased it for about $23. You can get it off of Amazon, but it's called Diplomacy. The way that I found out about Henry Kissinger is this. I was working in corporate and I was on my way up, but I was having trouble going into the next level, right? And a lot of my philosophies as far as business is concerned, understanding and looking at things from a business perspective, is influenced by, and it started really when I started reading and understanding these books, such as people like Henry Kissinger. I started reading their autobiography. I started reading how they think and how they see the world and why they did certain things, right? And a lot of people are saying, Anton, that's a long book. Y'all listen to a whole hour of raps every day when y'all driving back and forth into work. Throw it on an audiobook. Y'all do some of the things that's the worst for y'all, but when I try to give y'all some gems and to give y'all some understanding on how to move strategically throughout life, my boss was trying to convince me to move a certain way and was trying to coach me at certain points in my life. And he said, Anton, I want you to go and buy Henry Kissinger's Diplomacy. I said, what? Why would you do that? He said, Anton, I read that book when I was in college, when I was studying for my master's degree. And it helped me to get over the hump. And he really has taken off in society. Now, a lot of people are going to find that controversial because they say that Henry Kissinger was one of the most menacing people that you could ever run against or that you could ever have an opinion about in history. Let me bring y'all up to speed on who Henry Kissinger is so that you guys can better understand what I'm talking about, all right? Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Again, Henry Kissinger died just yesterday at 100 years old.
Israel's president and other world leaders are paying tribute to former U.S. Secretary of State, that's Henry Kissinger, who died yesterday. He was 100 years old. Kissinger led U.S. foreign policy through many critical moments in the 1970s and continued advising U.S. and foreign governments for the rest of his life. People sought out his advice. He received the Nobel Peace Prize, but many critics called him a war criminal. Margaret Brennan takes a look at his very complicated legacy.
Leaders from across the globe are taking time out to acknowledge and pay their respects. We're not talking about just Americans. Leaders from across the globe are taking their time out to pay their respects to Henry Kissinger, who is considered to be a war criminal, but was a Secretary of State and basically controlled so much. I mean, it's funny because when I was talking to Yaki Awaken, who I'm going to drop that interview for y'all shortly also, he was like, Anton, and he didn't know that I was familiar with Henry Kissinger and that I had read his book. And he was like, Anton, this guy was one of the most wildest, meanest, craziest people that you've ever met in your entire lifetime. And he's largely considered one of the most vexing war criminals to ever walk the face of the planet. Well, I would have you to know that multiple different administrations sought his advice throughout his lifetime. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Henry Kissinger first arrived on U.S. shores as a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany. Following a brief U.S. Army stint, he became a Harvard scholar, which paved his way to the highest echelons of power.
Face the Nation.
In 1958, Kissinger appeared on Face the Nation to discuss the issue that would dominate his career, the Cold War.
Over the long term, Russia is much more likely to be a threat to its security than we are.
He caught the eye of President Richard Nixon, who appointed him National Security Advisor in 1969.
Richard Nixon. Now, this guy immigrated, Jewish immigrant, and Nixon appointed him in 1969. 1969, this dude is a Harvard graduate. 1969, you got to ask yourself, how did these people get into the top of the field? Y'all need to read these books, man.
As well as Secretary of State. Kissinger eased relations with the Soviet Union and led secret talks to reopen relations with China after a 2-decade estrangement. In a 60 Minutes interview, Kissinger spoke about advising the most powerful man in the world.
When you're in this job, you're not conscious of working with the most powerful man in the world. You're much more conscious of the problems that have to be solved than of the power you exercise.
Kissinger.
Now think about that for a minute, because it's no different today than it was in yesteryear. He advised who they largely considered and brokered deals himself. Now, this was when things were a lot more visible, obviously. He brokered deals with other countries that the United States was estranged with himself. You got to understand that those conversations had to be wild. That the presidents and the decisions that they were making may not necessarily have been theirs. It may have been Henry Kissinger's. That's power. That's power. That's power. That he advised presidents and brokered deals, and God knows what else was going on behind the scenes.
Also spearheaded highly controversial policies, including the brutal bombing of Cambodia, yet was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970.
Let me rewind that for a second.
Also spearheaded highly controversial policies, including the brutal bombing of Cambodia, yet was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973 for helping to extricate the U.S. from the Vietnam War.
Will this meeting take very long?
He remained loyal to Nixon throughout the Watergate scandal and was one of the few inner circle members to escape virtually unscathed.
You know how much power that you got to have to be one of the only people that got no pushback or repercussions that came as a result of being a part of the Watergate scandal. Are y'all familiar with the Watergate scandal? Yeah, that is true, SS. He is the angel of death, for real. Are y'all familiar with the Watergate scandal? Do y'all know y'all history? I believe that everybody should go to and be able to reference certain points and certain talking points within history in order to even be able to be U.S. citizens. Y'all don't really know. Y'all history is kind of being rewritten based off of all of this cupcake information. But y'all don't really know how many people had to be sacrificed as a result of getting over into this point that we are in the country today. Y'all just protest, y'all run outside, y'all have these conversations acting like you being oppressed, and you don't even have a remote clue of what history is really like out here in these streets. You have no clue, and y'all out here like cupcakes, have no clue of what was really happening to people back in the day. Let's continue.
And served under President Ford. Kissinger's pragmatic policies, including support of dictatorships in Latin America, are darker parts of his legacy. Yet U.S. presidents continue to seek his counsel across.
Do you see it? Your savior, the first black president. Now, remember that this guy was a part of the Nixon administration in 1969. He had a consulting firm that he was probably being paid egregious amount of money, and he was still sitting next to some of your favorite presidents, the ones that you said were in your favor and pro-black and alphabet community and all of that. And you know who he was sitting right next to, advising, giving them advice and telling them what it is that they're supposed to be doing allegedly? Multiple different administrations until the time that he passed away. He was sitting there telling them and advising them on how it is that they're supposed to be operating within their office. It all comes back to one thing. It all comes back to one thing.
Across nearly 5 decades. In an interview on Face the Nation in 2014, Kissinger argued for American leadership.
Every part of the world is changing simultaneously, but it cannot change creatively without a major American contribution.
Amid global power shifts, Kissinger's own views were subject to change. In recent years, he controversially suggested Ukraine cede territory to Russia, only to then call for Ukraine to join NATO. This year, he visited a rising China one last time, counseling President Xi Jinping amid cooling relations with the U.S. Henry Kissinger's strategic decisions will continue to shape the globe for generations to come.
Can you imagine how powerful you have to be to actually be able to sit down with a Chinese presidents throughout history, have a consulting firm that then is still making a ton of money as a result of what it is that you do and say at 100 years old? At 100 years old. And see, that's why y'all think that all of this stuff is based off of what y'all think, but you don't educate yourself in order to make stronger strategic decisions in your life, understanding what the repercussions are going to be, even when it comes to your voting patterns and the people that you subject yourself to, or why people are doing what it's doing, or why capitalism is important, or why what it is that you think don't matter when it comes to reparations, or what's happening within your communities and societies, or why we have borders open, or why we go into war, or why you have to allocate all of these billions and trillions of dollars over into your military, or why Ukraine is moving this way, or why we have to support the war over there in Israel and things like that. There is so many facets to life, and it's so fascinating when it comes to history, and then combining it with business, and then you're trying to understand how democracy plays a role in it, and why they move this way and why they move this way. It is so many different working parts, but because you can't give everything to everybody as far as your opinion all at one time, you have to give them a little bit of baby food here and there, and then they're going to get mad at you and they're going to feel some type of way, but it doesn't change the dynamics of what's going on out here in society. Real talk. I want to start going a little bit deeper here on the Millionaire Morning Show, if you guys will let me, in different segments. I want to start exploring different principles, philosophies, books, theories, bringing it in with history, and then also allowing for that to inform us of how it is that we're supposed to move financially and how that affects us within our daily lives. So it's up to you guys. I'll test the waters with different segments to just see where the interest lies. And if you guys are interested in it, then we'll continue with it. If you're not, then we're going to just continue to move on, and we're going to continue to pivot and have conversations based off of the things that's more meaningful to you. Because if it's not meaningful to you, the things that I study when I leave here, right, or when I get off the Millionaire Morning Show, may be a little bit different than the things that you're interested in. So if we start to deep dive, and this is just a surface level thing to have a conversation with you guys to let you know that one of the most important people that shaped the way that you live your life today is passed away at 100 years old. And even after his death, he's still going to be controlling a lot of what happens in your life. If you guys are interested and start going a little bit deeper here on this show, or if we have to create an entirely different segment to do so, then let me know.